The platinum rule, do unto others as they would have you do unto them, that can have a positive effect on almost every aspect of managing and leading others. With each of the 4 DISC behavioral types, there's a different way to communicate and delegate tasks to them, a different way to compliment and correct them, a different way to motivate and counsel them. Learning these methods can quickly make you a more sensitive, effective leader of people. Sensitivity and tact are constantly demanded of leaders. If, as someone once said, tact is the radar of the mind, the platinum rule can be a valuable tune-up of your antenna. By now, you know your primary DISC behavioral style along with growth opportunities to help you deal better with tasks and people. Keep those thoughts in mind. Meanwhile, recognize that your power to influence employees springs from 2 sources. First, there's your position power. That's just what it sounds like. You're the CEO, the department head, and a certain amount of power comes with that title. But ask any CEO what happens when he tries to, let's say, get a brand of ketchup changed in the employee cafeteria. Ask the department head what happens when she decides to cut back on overtime. Ask the regional manager what happens when he asks all the store managers to upgrade the signs in their windows. Sometimes the bosses get their way, and sometimes they don't. So even if you have a title, you can't rely on position power alone to get you what you want. You also need personal power. In fact, it's now generally believed that a leader can't really lead until he or she is genuinely accepted by those who are to be led. If the CEO, department head, or even regional manager gets the cooperation that he or she asks for, it's not just because that person has a title. It's because he or she has also gained the confidence and trust of the average employee. It's because he or she has attained personal power. So position power comes from being anointed by the hierarchy, but personal power comes from earning it and developing it. Position power is a starting point for influencing people, but it's personal power that turns that mere compliance into real cooperation. The Platinum Rule provides that extra ingredient that leaders and managers can use in endless ways for their firm and for themselves. Being adaptable can help supervisors, managers, and leaders build bridges to their employees and make them feel valued. By learning how best to respond to their interests and concerns, to their strengths and weaknesses, you can get the most from your people as well as leave them more personally satisfied. In this segment of our DISC Platinum Rule program, we'll look at how you can adapt your leadership style in a variety of managerial situations, such as adapting your communication style and leadership style, helping others reach decisions, as well as motivating, complimenting, counseling, correcting, delegating, and acknowledging your direct reports. Let's begin with how to communicate with each style. So let's look at communicating with Ds. Here are some pointers. Listen to their suggestions, to their course of action, and the results that they're considering. Find areas where you already both agree. Work backwards toward gaining agreement on the results that you both want and you're both willing to either mutually or independently allow others to achieve. How about communicating with the I style? Well, listen to their personal feelings and experiences. Their style requires open and responsive interaction with others, preferably in a manner of congenial and unhurried conversation, like that between longtime friends. How about communicating with the S style, the steady style? Be ready to do more talking than listening. They don't feel comfortable when the limelight is focused solely on them. Clarify any key agenda items with them in advance. Stay organized and move forward steadily but slowly as you check to make sure that they understand and accept what is being said. And finally, communicating with the C style, the more compliant, conscientious style. Be well organized and clear in your communications with them. They search for logical conclusions, so make sure that you provide as many as you can. Ask your questions in a more discreet, non-judgmental manner to elicit the points, objectives, or assurances that the C's want. Okay, let's now talk about adaptability. For each of the 4 styles, I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to tell you how you, if you are that style, how you can be more adaptable by changing your behavior. And then I'm going to tell you how you can be more adaptable, regardless of what style you are, with each of the 4 styles. Let's start with the Ds. Now, when you are the D, here's what I suggest you do. Allow others to do things without excessive or untimely interference. Participate in the group without expecting always to be the boss, to be in command. Modify your tendency to give orders. Enlist others to give input and support through participative, collaborative actions. Praise and give credit for jobs well done. Let colleagues and employees know that you realize it's only natural that you and others will make mistakes. When delegating, give some authority along with the responsibility. Now, when others are Ds, you can actually help them more realistically gauge risks, to exercise more caution and deliberation before making decisions and coming to conclusions, to follow pertinent rules, regulations, and expectations, to recognize and solicit others' contributions, both as individuals and within a group, to tell others the reasons for their decisions, to cultivate more attention and responsiveness to emotions. Let's continue with adaptability. We're going to talk about what you can do as an I style to be more adaptable and how you can help other I styles be more adaptable. Now, when you're the I style, attend to details when appropriate. Improve your follow-through efforts. Monitor your socializing to keep it in balance with other aspects of business and life. Write things down and work from a list so that you'll know what to do and when to do it. Prioritize your activities and focus on tasks in their order of importance. Become more organized and orderly in the way you do things. And get the less appealing tasks of the day over with early in the day. And also pay attention to your time management. Check to make sure that you're on course with known tasks or goals. Now, when others are I's, here's how you can help them be more adaptable. Help them prioritize and organize. To see tasks through to completion. To view people and tasks a bit more objectively. To avoid overuse of giving and taking advice, which actually can result in a lack of focus on tasks. To write things down, to do the unpleasant as well as the fun things, to focus on what's important now, to avoid procrastination and or hoping that others will finish things for them, to practice and perfect when appropriate. Let's continue with our focus on adaptability, what you can do if you're an S to be more adaptable, and how you can help other S's be more adaptable. Now, when you're the S, stretch by taking on a little bit more or a little bit different duties beyond your comfort level. Increase verbalization of your thoughts and feelings rather than holding them in. Speed up your actions by getting into some projects a bit more quickly than you typically do. Try to desensitize yourself somewhat so that you aren't so negatively affected by your colleagues' feelings to the point of actually affecting your own performance. Learn to adapt more quickly to either changes or refinements of existing practices. Bolster your assertiveness techniques. Now, when others are S's, what can you do to help them be more adaptable? Well, you can help them utilize shortcuts and discard unnecessary steps to track their growth, to avoid doing things the same way every time, to focus on the goal without attending too much to other thoughts or feelings. Realize that tasks have more than one approach, to become more open to risk and change, to feel sincerely appreciated even when it's not verbalized to them, to speak up, to voice their thoughts and feelings rather than hold them in, to modify their tendency to do what others tell them to do because they don't want to rock the boat. And finally, to get and accept credit and praise when credit and praise is due and appropriate. And finally, let's talk about adaptability when you are the C and adaptability when you're trying to help others who are Cs. Now, when you're the C, modify criticism, whether it's spoken or unspoken, of other people's work. Check less often, or only check the critical things as opposed to everything, allowing the flow of the process to continue. Ease up on controlling emotions. Engage in a little bit more water cooler interaction. Accept the fact that you can have high standards without expecting perfection. Occasionally confront a colleague or a boss with whom you disagree instead of avoiding or ignoring them and doing what you want to do anyway. Tone down the tendency that you have to over-prepare. Now, regardless of your style, how can you help other Cs be more adaptable? Well, you can help them share their knowledge and expertise, to stand up for themselves with the people they prefer to avoid, to shoot for realistic deadlines, to view people and tasks less seriously and less critically, to balance their lives with both interaction and tasks, to keep on course with tasks with less checking, to maintain high expectations for high priority items and not necessarily everything. Whether you're a leader, a manager, or a supervisor, how do you help each of the DISC styles make decisions? Let's start with the Ds, helping Ds decide. Ds tend to make autonomous, no-nonsense decisions. If the decision will help them meet their goals, they go for it. If not, they say no. One of the few times they put off reaching a conclusion is when it takes too much time or effort doing the homework to determine the best alternative. Prevent this procrastination by simply providing a brief analysis for each option. Now, how do you help Is decide? Well, Is want to avoid discussions of complex, negative-sounding, messy problems. They frame suggestions in a very positive light. They're open to your suggestions as long as they allow them to look and feel good and not require a lot of difficult follow-up detail work or long-term commitments. How do you help S's decide? Well, S's deal with only one subject or situation at a time, one step at a time. Now, before moving on to other items, make sure that the S's are ready, willing, and able to do so. Remain calm and relaxed. Encourage them to share their suggestions as to how the decision might be made in a way that is likely to add even more stability to the current conditions. And finally, helping Cs decide. Confirm that they're open to discussing the problem or decision. If they aren't ready, either set a definite time that's better for both of you or explore their concern in even pursuing this subject. Give them time and space to think clearly. When the situation is being explored, review your impression of the process they're taking. Now let's discuss how you can motivate each of the DISC styles. How do you motivate Ds? Lead with the big picture. Provide them with options and clearly describe the probabilities of success in achieving each of those options. Allow them the opportunity to make their own choices, but set boundaries, but let them take charge. How about motivating the Is? Provide special incentives to inspire them to go the whole 9 yards. Show them how they can look good in the eyes of others. Create short-term contests that don't require long-term commitment. Reward them in front of others and let them speak about their achievements. How do you motivate S's? Show how their work benefits others. Show how the outcome will provide security for their family. Connect their individual work to the benefit of the whole team. Get them to see how their follow-through links to the greater good. Show how it can strengthen their relationships with others. And finally, motivating C's. You appeal to their need for accuracy and logic. Keep your approach clear, clean, and procedural. Better yet, provide illustration and documentation. And avoid exaggeration and vagueness. You need to show them how this is the best available current option. How do you practice adaptability when complementing each of the 4 DISC styles? Let's start with the Ds. You mention their achievements, their upward mobility, and their leadership potential. And you omit personal comments and focus on their track record. How do you compliment I's? Pay direct personal compliments to them when legitimately deserved and mention their charm, their friendliness, their creative ideas, their persuasiveness, and their appearance. In fact, better yet, how about all of the above? Complimenting S's. Mention their teamwork and their dependability. Remark about how others regard them, how well they get along with their coworkers, and how important their relationship-building efforts have been to the company. And effusiveness with the S style can arouse their suspicions, so stick to praising what they've done rather than personal attributes. Finally, how do you compliment C's? Mention their efficiency, their thought processes, their organization, persistence, even their accuracy. Don't mix personal and professional comments unless you know them very well. And finally, keep your praise simple and concise. Oftentimes, as a leader of people, we need to counsel them. So how do you counsel D's? Well, stick to the facts. Draw them out by talking about the desired results and then discuss their concerns. Focus on tasks a bit more than you focus on feelings. Ask them how they would solve problems. How do you counsel I's? Give them ample opportunity to talk about whatever may be bothering them. Pay attention to both facts and feelings, but put your primary emphasis on their feelings. Involve them by asking how they could solve a challenge or a problem themselves. Sometimes just airing their feelings and thoughts relieves tension for the I style. And talking allows them to get something off their chests and can even become an end in itself, since their energy is largely influenced by the quality of their relationships. How do you counsel S's? Well, understand the emotional side of their situation by drawing them out through questioning and listening. They're disrupted by change of the unknown. Reduce their fears by showing how specific changes will benefit them and others. And with C's, how do you counsel C's? Well, you draw them out by asking, how would you? Those kinds of questions about problems that they're experiencing. They express thoughts indirectly, so persist in your attempts to get them to talk, to open up, to get it out. They need to plan for change so that they can identify and bring under control any key considerations that have to be addressed. Now, when possible, allow them to investigate possible repercussions, especially at the beginning stages. That way, they'll become more comfortable with any possible changes that they have to adjust to. Now, sometimes as a leader of people, you actually have to correct what they're doing. But each style needs to be corrected according to their style. So how do you correct D's? Well, you describe what results are desired, show the gap between the actual and desired results, and clearly suggest the needed improvement and establish a time for them to get back to you. How do you correct I's? Well, they avoid facing problems, and if pressure persists, may actually walk away from the problem and not deal with it at all. Sometimes stress manifests itself in animated panic, such as, I can't talk now, Hal. It's really hit the fan this time. Let them specifically know the challenge and define the behaviors to solve the problem. Confirm the mutually agreeable action plan, preferably in writing, to prevent future problems. And use positive, optimistic questions and phrases when you deal with them. How do you correct S's? This is a little tricky. So you have to reassure them that you only want to correct a specific behavior, not them personally. They tend to take things personally, so remove the something that is wrong with you barrier as quickly as possible. Point out in a non-threatening way what they're already doing right while emphasizing what needs changing. Finally, how do you correct C's? Show them how to get a job done, and they'll master and modify it to suit their needs. Specify the exact behavior that is indicated and how you would like to see it changed. Mutually agree on checkpoints and time frames, and allow them to save face as they fear being wrong. Frequently as a leader, we need to delegate tasks and responsibilities to each of the 4 DISC styles, but you have to do it differently with each DISC style. For instance, how do you delegate to Ds? Take time to answer their most critical questions about structure and/or guidance that they require in a specific situation, because the more they understand the details, the more likely they will be to complete the task properly. So be sure to establish deadlines. Now, when delegating to I's, receive clear agreements. Set up checkpoints, time frames, to avoid long stretches with no progress reports. I's are often concept people who come up with plenty of ideas, but not necessarily the means of carrying them out. So steer them toward ways of assuring the implementation of those ideas that they actually come up with. Now, when you delegate to S's, be aware that S's may be reluctant to ask others to do their own share of the work. So make a personal appeal to their loyalty and sense of sportsmanship. Give them the task, state the deadlines that need to be met, and explain why it's important to do it that way. And finally, delegating to C's, take time to answer their most critical questions about structure and/or guidance that they require in a specific situation. The more they understand the details, the more likely they will be to complete the task properly. And be sure to establish deadlines, because C's often suffer from paralysis by analysis. And now for our final adaptability tip for leaders on acknowledging each of the 4 DISC styles. How do you acknowledge D's? When it's appropriate to reward or reinforce their behavior, focus on how pleased you are with their results and mention how glad you are to be a part of the process working with them to make things better for both you and the organization through their cooperation. In acknowledging I's, focus on how glad you are that they have succeeded in finding a pleasant solution to their concern or objective, and show that you appreciate them for their openness and willingness to respond to you in a way that allows everyone to end up feeling good about the results. Now, acknowledging S's, focus on how you sincerely appreciate their willingness to make things good for everyone, and approach matters in a systematic, low-keyed, and understanding manner, and reinforce the importance to them and of them in sharing their ideas with others. Acknowledging C's means that you focus on your realization of how difficult it can be for them to attempt to meet the high personal standards that they set for themselves, and cite specific and appropriate examples which prove this point. If you're a manager who wants to be seen as a good leader, then this particular segment is loaded with useful information. Now, if I were you, I'd listen several times to this session to get a real feel for how you can adapt your style to specific managerial situations with each of the DISC styles.